A lot has been told already by Pierre-Henri, so that this makes my life easier. But what I, shall I, or is it, which button do I have to push? Oh, yeah, okay. So what I want to tell you also is a bit, first of all, the situation in the Netherlands, that it is not only, the green finance transition does not only take place in the financial world, but also in the legal world. I'm going to say something about the approach in the government, some case law and some soft law, and then take a look at it, sustainable finance, from the, how come that it's, okay, this one, sorry. From the investee's perspective, as well as from the customer's perspective. So investees, I mean the portfolio companies. And then some hot issues that currently are being discussed at the level of the Netherlands. Okay. I'm sorry that I'm so bad in these things. And now I'm really out. So I hope that you don't mind that I seem to push the button forwards. Yeah, then again. Okay. One of the things that we have to say is that at least in the Netherlands, it's already for a long time that the greening of the economy should take place. Just one element that I want to put forward, already back in 2011, the Netherlands was the first country to apply the OECD set of growth indicators. So already more than 10 years ago, at the moment that in many countries there was not yet the idea that the greening of the economy should immediately take place, it was already started up in the Netherlands. And particularly also at the government level, for quite some time, there is an idea that we have to move forward and that we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And we now have to do it in a faster way. And there are a number of plans that are being implemented in the Netherlands, in particularly in order to reach out to that goal. In fact, not only, and that is an important element, the government is aware about that, but also other parties, like, in fact, the court is involved. How to do this? Well, one of the elements that we have to put to the fore that is also of importance to mention is that everybody is already noticing that. Give you just one example, but there are many more to refer to. Previously, we could speed at highways 130, nothing to compare to the Germans, I know, but this is already during the day reduced to 100, and the reason is really also that we want to reduce nitrogen emission. That's important, so we really also are doing something about it. And in fact, case law is involved too. I know that in some countries there is also some case law popping up, but I think that the Netherlands was one of the first to move onwards in that perspective. I'm not going to tackle the issue of the constitution because there were already some constitutional questions, but here also there might be some rather interesting features constitutionally about the fact that our highest court in 2019 explicitly mentioned that the commitment that the state made in order to reduce carbon dioxide and reduce the greenhouse gases by the end of 2020 with at least 25% was not reached out, it was not complied with, and in fact they found the state, the highest court, guilty of not reaching towards this responsibility that they took on board a number of years ago. So the Urgenda case is showing in fact also that the cases, or that the highest court is in fact involved in the matter too. And it in fact continued. You might have heard about a Shell case, and the Court of The Hague last year, and of course it went to appeal, also explicitly said that Shell should do more, meaning that they must comply with the rule that they have to reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 2030 with 45%. And interesting is that here this was based on a duty of care. So in fact, Book 6, Article 162, upon which it is based, saying that climate change is a human rights issue and also companies must participate in climate change goals. So this was explicitly provided. An extra contractual liability issue was here set forward. Now, of course, Shell went into appeal because also it was involving scope 3 emission reduction, which means that they also must take care about the customers using their fuels and so to reduce. Let's be honest, Pierre-Henri, this is untenable for Shell. Probably. So, of course, they went into appeal. We'll see what the solution will be in the higher court. Also, we went forward in other fields. So we now are going towards the direction of the topic of today. Soft law is already taking the next steps too, with the Dutch Stewardship Code. Like in the UK, many institutional investors have already signed for it and tried to apply. And in fact, to a large extent, it is also already embedded in the second Shareholder Rights Directive, where you can find also similar requirements for the institutional investors. Getting towards the second element is institutional investors. And here I have to say that not everything is going immediately in a way that we like it, because of course you take away sometimes also the possibilities for growth, which is also once more referring. So of course, for instance, in the farming industry, they are against it. But this shifted quite a lot, in fact. So I apologize that now the sheets are not in the same order that I would like to have them, but okay. So, referring now to the situation between the investors on the one hand side and the portfolio companies in the opposite side. First of all is, as we already started quite some time ago with respect to engagement, you already noticed that engagement, in particularly by the institutional investors, is already pretty much embedded into the Dutch society. So, in particularly as we have large institutional investors, and that they all engage with companies, the consequence of it all is that over time you see a significant increase, at least, in engagement via voting at general meetings. Other issues to come. This is certainly also due to the large institutionalization of the Dutch market. Portfolio companies have, in fact, to a large extent, in the Netherlands, institutional investors, maybe not as their only shareholders, but certainly as their most important class of shareholders. As you can see, the white side, where, in fact, on average, there is already 40% in the hands of the institutions, and in fact, in the largest companies, it's even more. And it resembles, to a large extent, the US market and the UK market more than the concentrated ownership structure that we are familiar with, for instance, in Austria, even in Germany, still, with the exception of the DAX 40. Having said this, it is also then heavily studied already, in particularly by the institutional investor representative called Eumedion, which is an organization that has approximately the membership of 60 large institutional investors that are regularly in several ways taking contact in different perspectives, of course, with their portfolio companies, how they behave and what they want from their portfolio companies, what should happen. And they report extensively, as you can see here, in compliance with the rules that have been enacted over the last number of years, in particularly also with the Shareholder Rights Directive, how they build up their relationships with their portfolio companies. Does it create difficulties? Yes, later onwards we will talk about that, because they also move onwards with this in this perspective, meaning that they further select and prioritize the way that they want to get their relationships developed with the companies, what their targets are, what the performances are, but they still lag behind, and that's an important one that I want to stress, once you really go towards the more sustainable elements. And you see it here. One of the requirements that is being requested also in this second Shareholder Rights Directive is communication with other stakeholders. How to do that? That's a tricky one. And once you go to the ones that you try to build up a relationship with other stakeholders, you see that then the numbers are dramatically low compared to all the other issues. put it differently, it at least raises the question to what extent it is indeed to be built in as a mandatory requirement for institutional investors or for asset managers and so on, not only invest money, but also to go after the other stakeholders. And we had before the break already a question that was raised of, hey, what about sustainability integrated into these perspectives next to risk management and so on. Asset managers, institutional investors and the like have so many issues at stake that the question has to pop up to what extent they can comply with everything. So I follow your question also. I hope we can't go in that direction. A little bit also what Pierre-Henri said, let's be honest. It's not only at the level, in fact, that we need products and so on and we need oil, it's also at the level that the rules are so expanded that maybe also even at the investor level there are problems that are being raised and that needs to be taken into account. How far can we stretch it? Okay, so that's already one, and it continues. For instance, one of the issues that was also raised in the list of questions was, what about collaboration? Well, there are two issues that I want to say. This is, in fact, hardly ever yet being related to, for instance, the takeover directive and collaboration, because at the level of Eumedion, remember, this is the institutional investor group that regularly is in contact with each other, is making use also of the services of Eumedion to raise questions at general meetings and the like. To what extent are they then collaborating and forming a platform that could be also envisaged as working together? It's a little bit at the edge. It can be questioned. I know at least in Ireland, we will hear that probably later onwards, there are already documentation that provides insight how to proceed in collaboration vis-a-vis the company, what could be considered also as really also under the takeover directive collaboration and what is outside that. Doesn't exist as far as I could find it yet in the Netherlands, and in fact this is not being raised as an issue currently, but it should be taken a look at. In particularly because there is a next one. There is also collaboration between here on for instance, a platform that is being created between the government on the one hand side, some non-governmental organizations, and institutional investors like pension funds working together to reach out for sustainability, which is a fine thing, but once more from other side, the financial perspective in company law, takeover law, has not been taken into account here. So that is certainly also an issue to be looked at, next to the fact that it might serve as an example how we can later onwards comply with a number of sustainability requirements with collaboration in, for instance, agreements among which that are being entered into by the different parties. Not only the investors, but also, for instance, the government that is participating into that end. So here are already a number of features where we are currently. Next one is vis-a-vis the customers. Once more, I have to say, being a Belgian citizen originally, can say so from, hey, well done, Netherlands. First of all, also here, the Netherlands is taking, to a large extent, the lead vis-a-vis its customers as institutional investors to try to reach out for more sustainability investment. This is a report of share action of the 75 largest asset managers with respect to responsible investment. I only show you the first 15 or 14, one of these 75. 5 are Dutch, and all 5 are in the list of the 10 best performing. So in fact, they already made major steps in trying to, in fact, provide in sustainability and invest in accordance with what more than likely we all want as individuals participating in these asset managers indirectly. So there is already a lot done in that perspective. In fact, also, with the greening and these green bonds, the Netherlands is taking a nice approach, because if you see, we are among, as a smaller country, the bigger ones. Of course, Germany is always taking the lead, and I apologize that you can't see it, but Germany is coming first, and then you have France, then you have the UK, and then you have the Netherlands. So, of course, the largest part of green bond issuances is coming and flowing from Germany, but relatively speaking, if you take the relative scenario, the Netherlands is being ahead of even Germany in issuing green bonds. Does it then mean that nothing needs to be done? Well, not exactly. First of all is, and it was already referred to by, once more, Pierre-Henri, Article 6, Article 8, Article 9 funds, and the classification. We see that we already have a lot of, in fact, light green funds, deep green funds, and still, obviously, the largest group that has no express ESG criteria taken into account. Compared to, for instance, the Irish case, we are once more taking the lead. 83% of the Irish funds are still Article 6 funds. Does it mean, and now I come to the final part, but maybe also the most important part of my presentation, does it mean that nothing can be done? Absolutely not. First of all, is here immediately a report of the Dutch regulator was a couple of months ago published, assessing what is really also the quality of the reporting in Article 8 and Article 9, and in fact it was pretty much put to the fore that vagueness is still in these funds available. And they refer, for instance, to an example of a fund that aims to increase the sustainability profile in relation to the index on the basis of positive selection. To say, so we're doing good. In all honesty, when I read this as an individual investor, I have not the slightest clue what it means. And in fact, does it then mean that this is a green fund? I doubt it. So there is a lot to be said about these issues currently. So it's nice to have a 6, 8, and 9, but even in the deep green funds, there are still problems. An important element that I want to raise is, and it goes a little bit also after some of the comments that have been made by Pierre-Henri earlier onwards, is some of these issues are taking place at different levels at the same time. So first of all is role of companies is being changed. We have now also a new proposal where it is explicitly requested under, what was it again, Article 25 of the Sustainability Proposal Directive to think about the board of directors, who they shall serve, and the corporate purpose is taken on board. In fact, in the Netherlands already for 2 years, and this is really also being discussed, whether or not we have to go into the direction of the French Loi Pacte and to introduce also, like they did it in France, explicitly that the board of directors ensures that the company participates in society as a responsible company. So, in fact, introducing a legal basis also for the corporate purpose, and this will no longer be the one that you see here, but in fact, it will then be replaced with a more sustainability issue. So, this is more or less over. And then it puts to the pressure also, what is the position of the shareholders, and in particularly the position of the institutional investors that also have to go green. If they also have to go green, but the companies also have to go green, where does the difference lie, and can we have them combined? So that's one of the questions that we are struggling with. Because it goes further, it goes also into the direction of additionally requiring from, in particularly institutional investors, but more broadly even from all shareholders, and I'm getting also, because I'm a small individual and shareholder myself too, I'm getting a little bit puzzled first of all, but also a little bit anxious. Because they ask me also as a shareholder, to recognize the importance of a strategy focused on long-term value creation. So I shall no longer strive for my own interests. I hope that later onwards I get a nice pension. And yes, absolutely, I want, if possible, also green finance. But I also want to be able, when I retire, to drink my coffee without having to question myself whether or not I can still afford it to pay my own coffee. So it goes a little bit in your direction once more. So there are a number of elements that are now being raised and questioned how far we can stretch it. I'm going to skip that one to bring another one where you see this discussion that is popping up. Remember that I mentioned 10 minutes ago the case law vis-à-vis Shell. In fact, it goes beyond that. Already for a number of years, every year there is a group, of course, that launches a proposal supported by institutional investors, so they make use of their right to put an item on the agenda with respect to sustainability, more sustainability. The group is called Follow This, and year after year you see an increase in the support for their views. And last year they considered this as a victory, but of course it was still defeated. They already have more than 30% support, of course by institutional investors. Shell is a large company. No way that they can do it individually. So supported by a substantial number of institutional investors to go forward in this greening of the economy, that shall do more. You see it, by the way, not only in Shell, the oil company, it happens at Total Energies, it happens at Exxon, it happens at so many companies. Now, what is then the issue? And I want to combine this and I want to reflect on that one a little bit. The issue is, and again, I apologize that the numbers are too small, we made some assessment to figuring it out, in particularly in the relationship from the portfolio companies to the institutional investors to the beneficiaries is then behind it. And here there is an issue that in fact worries me the most. And that is the following issue. That is that as a consequence of the debate that currently takes place, taking into account the interests of the beneficiaries in order to go towards the greening of the economy. I remember the question that was being raised from our Spanish colleagues saying, so everybody shall be saying at least neutral or saying, yes, go for it. Okay. The next step is then, of course, okay, if we take it into account, how are we going to continue? One of the things that has been discussed dramatically last year, in particularly in the Netherlands, was exactly that issue. Due to the Follow This discussion, having as a consequence the major opposition against the current policies of Shell, saying that you have to green faster, the consequence of it was that the pension fund, and one of the pension funds I belong to too, was saying, okay, we get rid of everything, all our investments in oil in particularly. They have approximately 500 million, the ABP I'm referring to, of which I'm a beneficiary in that company, saying it will get out. It makes me very unhappy. Why does it make me very unhappy? I can't do and bring any change. I can't. I'm a beneficiary. Yeah? I can't do anything about it. I couldn't go to ABP, say, so I'm against it. And many people spoke out saying, so this is not a good development. Because they said, there is pressure, we step out and we go to something else. What else? Yeah? Because in fact, what you do is you start replacing the investors, good investors, that have a significant influence in this company, that can start discussion with this company to go into the green direction, stepped out. And who steps in? Leave it to you to consider, but most of the time these are different. Yes, other people step in. But of course, this is going not optimally in an optimal way forward. So in fact, when I look at the greening of the financial developments, I fully agree with what Pierre-Henri earlier onward said. We're taking the lead, but we also go a little bit too fast, more than likely, differently from the GDPR. This is a much broader topic which we can't tackle immediately. And I want to end, if you allow me, if I still have 2 more minutes, with something else. And this is once more a personal experience, because we're not there. So first of all, I think this is going too fast in all different directions. But also I can share with you, I'm an independent director in a small financial services company that is offering also products to, in fact, intermediaries, but also directly to clients. We struggle a lot, I can tell you. Every board meeting I'm at with, we are in fact going all the time saying, how are we going to cope with it? So first of all, I have to say is Europe, and also in fact each individual country, is saying we need to have significant competition among the financial services provider. We're a small one. we hardly can cope with all the rules anymore. It's almost impossible. There are too many. Yeah? That's the first thing. The second thing is, we are in fact also, and I don't know it myself personally how it works exactly, but I know we are a quantitative fund, meaning that we work with algorithms and so on and so forth. That's what we promise towards our clients. Straightforward. Yeah, so for sure we're a MiFID Article 6. We're not going. But even there, our customers are financially driven. Even there we have to pay an enormous amount of attention because we have, let's say, a scope of a couple of thousands of companies that we can invest in. Something like 100, 150, we actually invest in. Every time we replace, and it regularly happens, of course, one company with another one, we have to buy quite some services of different new players in the market, the green players that assess what the quality is of the different companies, that make work of different kinds of standards, that cost a lot of money, of course, but they also use different kinds of standards. Some of them, in some of these indices, they're well framed, and another one it's going in the opposite direction, in order to make sure that our products that are sold are being considered light green, a little bit greener, go a little bit once more darker, completely gray, and so on and so forth. That's impossible for us. So my message here is also a little bit so on, please, indeed, try to continue to take the lead. But also we have to be very careful that the current way we are moving forward could end up that we in fact are killing our own, no, killing would be a too tough a word, but we are in fact also hurting maybe our own economy. Because yes, things in the world will go on in different ways. Having said this, of course, we have to strive to take the lead, but step by step. Thank you.